So I want to remind you of something really important. There is an awesome human inside every single one of you. And that doesn't mean you're perfect. That doesn't mean that everything you always wanted to accomplish and grow into is done. It means you have the capacity to grow, to flourish, to improve, and to positively impact other people, which is all about purpose. And it takes some work to embrace that awesome human for a bunch of reasons. One, life is really challenging and it keeps throwing up obstacles in our way. Another reason is our brain gets in the way and it creates some mental blocks that we need to work through, and we're going to talk about how to do that today. But it is possible to do, and this is what I want to talk to you about this morning. Now, I want to share with you one of my favorite, I don't know if it's a direct quote because Michelangelo lived a long time ago, but he used to talk about, Michelangelo, the famous sculptor, used to talk about when he looks at a piece of marble, the sculpture is already in there. And his job is just to chisel away at the excess to bring it out. And that is what I see as our life's work, is to chisel away at the excess to bring out our inner awesome human. And my goal today is to energize that work for you, because I'm sure you're already doing a lot of it. I want to begin with a question. And the question I want you to answer, and please feel free to put this in comments to share with each other, but just for yourself, how would you describe your relationship with yourself? Like if you had to describe your relationship with yourself, how would you do it? I want to tell you that, in my bio, you heard I'm an expert on emotional fitness and all that it's kind of fun to listen to your bio sometimes, with all that negativity in your brain. But I want to tell you that for most of my life, my relationship with myself was somewhere between like a military sergeant and the harshest, toughest critic. I came to the US as a refugee when I was a teenager. I grew up in the former Soviet Union, and it was a really, really tough experience. We lived in refugee settlements for a while. We had nothing when we left, a couple suitcases, and then we started our journey in America in the projects. Very, very grateful to have welfare and food stamps to get started, but that was really tough. And that kind of cemented in me in this idea that life is a struggle. It just has to be really hard. And I adopted this really tough kind of relationship with myself that, the military sergeant, it was always kind of work harder, do more, not enough, you're not enough. Does your inner voice ever tell you you're not enough? You're not doing enough, you're not good enough as a parent, you're not good enough as a leader. I think we can all relate. And the thing is, I worked really, really hard, and I've always really loved working. I think hard work is awesome. I worked really hard, and I accomplished a lot. And my accomplishments, I'm really proud of them. They were really meaningful to me. But it all came at the expense of my well-being because of my inner harshness, because I refused to treat myself forget as an awesome human, as a human. Like basic things like rest or sleep, I didn't think were for me. I thought they were for either people who are really weak, and I was a tough cookie, or people who've already accomplished everything and then they could take a break. And so I did achieve a lot, but I denied myself most basic physical, mental, emotional needs. And I had this really harsh relationship with myself. And I thought that's how you're supposed to do it. I thought that's how you're supposed to achieve meaningful things in your life. And unfortunately, it didn't get me to where I wanted to go. It didn't get me to serve my purpose. It got me to a really scary place because several years ago, I completely burnt out. And when I say I burnt out, I stopped being able to function. So I mean it quite literally. And it's really, really scary to say. I've written a book about it. I've talked about it to hundreds of thousands of people. It's still really hard to say I stopped being able to be a mom to my daughter, who's now 17. I stopped being able to be a leader at work. I stopped functioning. And it was the darkest, most difficult time in my life. And to be honest, I didn't know what to do. I didn't really have answers, but I didn't want to give up. And so for the first time in my life, I started to look within. I'd spent my whole life looking at achievements or success or hard work as something that would bring me fulfillment and fill my purpose and joy. But for the first time in my life, I started to look within. And I learned an incredibly powerful lesson, which is the lesson that I'm here to share with all of you. And that is that what I had to do to truly honor my purpose and things I wanted to do, but also just to live as a human, to actually enjoy some of my daily experience, I had to create a more supportive relationship with myself. And I know I am not alone, especially as a woman, for treating myself in an unkind way, right? How much kinder are we to others than we are towards ourselves? I know I'm not alone in kind of always feeling that I wasn't enough, I wasn't doing enough. And we believe this not because it's our fault, but we're also fed a lot of those messages by our society, by our families, by the media, right? You know, there's this like, I used to love being called a superwoman. Like, I loved it. People would be like, oh, Nataly, she's a superwoman. She can get more done in a day than most people in 10 days. And I was like, yes. And it was like a badge of honor for all my exhaustion. I was like, but I am a superwoman. To be honest with you, I really hate when people call me a superwoman now. I actually correct them. I said, no, I'm a human being. And I'm a human being, and like all human beings, I need rest, and I need breaks, and I need to take care of my emotional well-being. I'm not superhuman. And so my invitation to you, and the reason I asked you to think about the relationship that you have with yourself, is to consider how you treat yourself and to recognize you're not a superwoman, you're an awesome human. And there are two parts to that. You're awesome. You have a lot of gifts to give. You can honor your purpose. You can do so much good for others, but you're human, which means you have to take care of yourself, that you have emotional, mental, and physical needs. You have a limited amount of energy. You need to fuel yourself. And that all begins by creating a more supportive relationship with yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, and other people. Because when you do that, you can struggle less through whatever challenges life brings you. And the thing is, challenge in life is constant. Okay, we're going through something really, really, really hard, right? The pandemic, that's something, hopefully it's the hardest thing in our lifetime. But challenge in life is constant. But struggle is optional. Struggle comes from the inside. Struggle comes from the way that you approach a challenge. Struggle comes from the way that you treat yourself. Struggle comes from your relationship with yourself, and we can reduce how much we struggle even when life is tough or annoying or frustrating or just difficult by creating a more supportive relationship with ourselves. You know, there's this, I spent 20 years in tech and finance and really kind of very tough male-dominated industries, and there's like always this saying, my daughter told me I should call it a meme. I don't know if it's correct, but you got to listen to your teenage kids, okay? Because then you try to be cool like them. So she said this is a meme. People would always say, the struggle is real, you know? Well, I want to call official BS on that. The challenge is real, but struggle is optional. And that's what emotional fitness is all about. When you cultivate your emotional fitness, it is not about becoming tough, right? That's what I thought, actually. I thought I had to be tough. I had to like not let anything get to me. You know, I used to, if you like Google, please don't, but if you wanted to, if you Google images of me like speaking to teams, you know, 10 years ago, you'd get a lot of this. You know, like this. You also get this if you like Google leadership, stock photos, it's a lot of this. You know, I thought that no matter what, I had to be tough and I had to be positive all the time. Well, actually, no. Emotional fitness is not about being tough. Research shows that the most resilient people, when they're going through difficult times, they feel all of the difficult feelings intensely, but they look for positive meaning and they support themselves through it. So emotional fitness is not about being tough. It's also not about being positive all the time. That's a big trap that I held myself in, that I think we all fall into. You are a human being. You're not a machine. You're not meant to feel good all the time. All of your emotions are valid. Now, some are easier to feel than others. It is easier to feel joy and fun and excitement than it is to feel sadness or frustration or fear. But there are no positive or negative emotions. All of your emotions are valid, and core to practicing and strengthening your emotional fitness is to learn how to support yourself, how to embrace all of the different emotions you feel, and support yourself to move through the difficult ones. And so this is the core skill that we must practice and cultivate, and I'm going to share a couple ways for you to do it. In order for us to embrace our inner awesome human, we have to strengthen our emotional fitness, which is all about creating a more supportive relationship with ourselves, our thoughts, our emotions, and other people. All right, Nataly, how do I do that? You got me convinced. How do I do that? I wish I could kidnap you all, I say this lovingly, and just like kidnap you all for a week and teach you all the skills that I teach. I spent years after my burnout doing a lot of research in neuroscience and behavioral science, and also diving deeply into Eastern traditions like yoga and Buddhism to come up with what we now call the Happier Method, which has these 5 core emotional fitness skills. So I wish I could just like take you all and we could spend time on them. But I picked 2 today that I thought were most relevant. And before we dive into the skills, and I promise I'm going to give you the skills and ways to practice them that you can do right away, we need a quick neuroscience lesson. Now, this is not high school, so it'll be as unboring as humanly possible and short, I promise. But it's really important to understand how our brain might get in the way of our emotional fitness, of our being supportive of ourselves, of our ability to weather challenges so we can course correct it. So first, another question, and this is like a mini pop quiz, okay? And again, I encourage you to put your answers in comments just so you can all participate together. So first, bad news before the question. Here's the bad news. Your brain does not care about your happiness. Not at all. Actually, your brain does not care about your feelings at all. Don't get mad at your brain. Okay, but it's really insensitive. It could care less how you feel. There's only one thing your brain cares about. And I want you to think about, and again, answer for yourself or put in the comments, what do you think is that one thing that is the most important thing for your brain, that it mostly cares about? See, this is not high school because I'm going to give you the answer, okay? And the answer is survival. The number one job for your brain is to keep you safe from danger so you can survive. That is what your brain cares about. And I shouldn't say that's bad news, actually, because I think being alive is kind of awesome. I enjoy it. But that means something. So because your brain's number one goal is to help you survive, it's always looking out for possible danger, right? And danger is physical. We're dealing with a virus. That's physical danger. But there's also such things as psychological danger, right? You have to have a tough conversation with someone next week. You know how your brain just ruminates on that and thinks about the person's going to hate me, they're going to be so mad at me. That's your brain looking out for possible danger, or you're facing some uncertainty and your brain is just going to the worst case scenario. Your brain is always scanning our environment for danger, and one of the things that's developed to help it do that is what's called a negativity bias. We all have this negativity bias. We're all much more sensitive to anything that is negative, was negative, is negative, could go wrong, than anything that is positive. Why? Because danger usually comes with negative stimuli, right? If you see a pack of wolves running at you, a lot of negative stimuli, the brain is sensitive to them, it notices them, it helps to protect you from danger by hopefully running away. So we all have this negativity bias to different degrees. I just wanna, in the interest of building trust and opening up, I just want to tell you my negativity bias is through the roof. I'm a Russian Jewish refugee, okay? I and the women in my family have a black belt in this being sensitive to what could go wrong. Like when I wake up in the morning, it's a little bit like, I can tell you all the things that are going to go wrong today. And oh my God, I haven't heard from my daughter in 30 seconds. Did something go wrong, right? Okay, so I have it really, really high. My husband is someone who has the negativity bias. We all have it, but he has it less, right? Thank God for him. And for 24 years now, I've been driving him completely crazy with mine, but that's how we work, okay? So we all have it on a curve, but we all have it. And what that means is when it comes to yourself, your brain is much more focused on what's wrong with me, my flaws, my mistakes, I'm not good enough at this, and it's ignoring anything that is great and amazing and wonderful because, it's familiar. When you're going through your day, your brain is looking out for what could go wrong. This is wrong. This is annoying because it's all a sign of danger, and ignoring a lot of things that are good or okay or positive or comforting or sources of joy. And this negativity bias does help to keep us alive, but it doesn't help us thrive. It does not help us embrace our awesome human. It drains our energy if we don't course correct it. And it presents us essentially an incorrect emotional picture of our life. And I wanted to give you that. I wanted to give you this little mini neuroscience lesson, because just becoming aware of how my brain gets in my way, of how it throws up mental blocks that make me feel less than, that make me feel not enough, that make me over-focus on everything that's wrong, that causes struggle. And so we have to practice these emotional fitness skills to course correct for your brain's tendency to over-focus on the negative. So the first skill that I want to talk to you about is something I just got to tell you. The word I'm about to say, if I heard this word 10 years ago and someone told me I needed this was important, I probably would have gotten up and left. The first skill is self-compassion. Now, one of the reasons I would have gotten up and left is because I completely misunderstood self-compassion. I thought self-compassion was like saying, I'm amazing and everything about me is amazing and I never have to do anything and life is wonderful. No, I was so afraid it would make me like a lazy sloth because I misunderstood it, right? By the way, I wasn't alone. I've done a lot of research, particularly with women who tell me they're afraid to practice self-compassion because they think it's going to make them lazy. It's going to get in the way of their growth and self-improvement. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. So what is self-compassion and why is it so important? Self-compassion is something you're all familiar with because you're already practicing a lot of compassion towards other people. When a friend tells you that she made a mistake, what do you say? You are pathetic. I cannot believe you did that. That is the worst thing in the world. You're a horrible human being. No, you do not say that. You say, oh, that sucks. Yeah, you screwed that up. But, it's not the end of the world. What can you learn? How can you be better? But the first thing I said, we say to ourselves, okay? Or your colleague tells you she's tired. What do you say? Don't be such a wuss. Work harder. You don't have time to rest. No, you don't say that. You say that to yourself. You say something like, listen, can you take a break? Like you need to take a break to keep going. So we already treat people in our lives with compassion, with this care and support, but we don't apply it to ourselves. So I want to talk to you about how to do that, how to turn that lens of compassion on yourself. And at the core of it is really retraining your brain from these negative stories it keeps telling you about yourself. So the first thing I want to tell you before I give you your definition of self-compassion and a way to practice it is please understand, because of what we just talked about, the negativity bias, the oversensitivity to anything negative, the danger, just because your brain offers you a thought doesn't mean you have to take it. I want you to recognize that you are the editor of your thoughts. I want you to practice being the editor of your thoughts. This was one of the biggest changes that I made on my way from healing from burnout, and I practice this every day, is this recognition that your brain offers you thoughts. They're often irrational. They're not rooted in fact. They're influenced by so many factors you may not even be aware of, and we tend to just take it and run. No, I want you to be the editor. A good editor asks, is this thought true? What are the facts to support it? Is this thought helpful? Does this thought help me be the awesome human that I want to be? Does it help me do the things that are important to me? And this is really core to your practice of self-compassion. This is the first step. When your brain starts to tell you, oh my God, you're not good enough. I can't believe you screwed that up. You're the worst mother in the world because you didn't make a homemade dinner 7 nights a week. That's what I used to tell myself. That was one of my things. I want you to talk back to your brain. I want you to edit your thoughts. And it's at the core of practicing self-compassion, because self-compassion is the skill of treating yourself like you would a friend in a way that reduces struggle with support and care and a desire to help yourself get through whatever that thing is, big challenge or small challenge. And at the core of it, we have to learn to hear when our brain gives us these thoughts that make us struggle, and how to edit them, how to correct them. I'm going to give you my absolute favorite practice. I developed this practice for myself when I was just starting to practice self-compassion, and my brain was yelling at me, oh my God, you are pathetic. This is horrible. How are you letting yourself off the hook? No, 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 no. That is the life-ending mistake you just made. You just practiced. So this is the practice that I developed for myself that I want to share with you. And I call it 3 steps to talking to yourself, just like you would to a friend. Now, when to use this practice? So many times. So if you've made a mistake or something didn't go quite as perfectly as your brain has decided it should, or you just find yourself like stuck in those thoughts of I'm not good enough as a mother, I'm not good enough at work, like you just find yourself in those thoughts, this is a great time to practice. So 3 steps. And actually before the 3 steps, what I want you to imagine is you're talking to a good friend. And I actually want you to imagine a friend. I usually think of my daughter Mia when I do this practice. Sometimes I'll do it out loud and she'd be like, I like that I'm part of this practice with you, Mama. And I'm like, yes. Because hopefully I'm passing that on to her. So pretend you're talking to a good friend. Actually think of who that person is. 3 steps. The first is acknowledge. Acknowledge the situation. So whatever happened, acknowledge it. Self-compassion is not about pretending that you're perfect, that you never make mistakes, that there's nothing about you to improve. It's actually about courageously witnessing yourself fully. But there's a difference between witnessing and judging. Right? I'm going to give you an example because it just happened earlier this week. So as a family, my husband, my daughter, and I, we try to like do the no phones at the table rule. Okay. So I had my phone with me. It was on a chair next to our kitchen table. And there was just a lot going on that day at work. And so I definitely broke the rule 1,000 times. And I was looking at my phone. And then I was walking after dinner to my home office, and my brain was on, it was going. It was like, oh my God, you suck. You're the worst mother ever. I can't believe you're on your phone. Your daughter thinks you don't love her. Like, I know it goes in your head too. And I paused myself and I practiced this and I said, okay, let's acknowledge. I screwed up. I was using my phone during dinner and that sucks. I don't want to do that. I don't want to not be present with my family. So that's acknowledging. I was on my phone during dinner, and I wish I wasn't. Judging is when we make up a big story about it. Judging is about, this happened, and here's what it means. So I was on my phone during dinner. That means I'm a horrible mother. I was on my phone during dinner. My family won't love me. That's judging. That's your brain making up these negative, dramatic stories. So the first step in self-compassion is just acknowledge, just focus on the facts. What happened? What did you do? This is going on. Acknowledge the situation. Second, support. Say something supportive to yourself, just like you would to a friend, right? Like, I bet, you don't even know me, but I bet as you're listening to me right now, I bet many of you were like, oh, come on, it's not a big deal, right? You probably thought that. Well, that's a supportive thing you would say to a friend. So say something supportive to yourself. And 3, move forward. Identify what is something you can learn from what just happened or what you did to help you do better in the future. And this step is really important. It helps your brain. Your brain is like a little child, by the way. And so you know how little children, they do really well with direction. Like when my daughter was little, if she was like making too much mess over here, I just had to like put something shiny over here and she just shifted. So your brain is like that. It wants your direction. So when you shift it to, let's think about what I can learn from this and do better in the future, you shift it away from you suck, you're horrible, you're not good enough, and all that kind of stuff. So these 3 steps, and the one tip I want to give you for when you do this practice is to use your name or you. So don't say I, say you, or in my case, Nataly. Research shows that when we practice positive self-talk like this, using you or your name helps us be a little bit more objective, right? We actually talk to ourselves more like a friend. So when you do this, practice you instead of using I.